and I too felt ready to start life all over again. It was as if that great rush of anger had washed me clean, emptied me of hope, and gazing up at the dark sky, spangled with the signs and stars, for the first time, the first, I laid my heart open to the benign indifference of the universe. One of the most renowned pieces of 20th century literature, and my personal favorite, is The Stranger by Albert Camus. The story takes place in Algeria, and it depicts a man named Meursault, a middle-aged Frenchman in his around 20s, which we don't know exactly. Little is known about the life or background of Meursault. We know that he works as a clerk in an office, and his pay and pension is very mediocre. If you have or haven't read the book, then you probably also know about the infamous line on it that begins the book, and it tailors throughout. It's "Mother died today, or maybe yesterday, I can't be sure," which is a very odd reaction to the passing of your own mother. Characters in a book are usually the epiphany of the writer himself, and The Stranger is no exception to this, as Camus wrote The Stranger and Meursault to be characters of himself and his views of the human existence and the indifference inside the universe. He goes on to explain the absurdity of the judicial system, the absurdity in life, and the way we view things as they are. Now, Camus is not only a novelist, he's also one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, including the likes of Martin Heidegger and Jean-Paul Sartre. Now, these three were definitely not the first, but they were the big pivotal movement that was needed for the existentialist movement around the 20th century. Now, following World War II, people began to see the world for what it truly is, nothing but sorrow, grief, and death. Camus revolted against the essence and premeditated life. He urged that people have their own personal freedoms, and he wrote core essential pieces like The Stranger to help support people become their own personal selves and seek personal freedom. Now, to give a psychological breakdown of the character Meursault written by Camus, then we have to examine the very starting pages. In the beginning, Meursault is shown to have low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is a recurrent theme in the storyline. Psychologist Nathaniel Branden explores that signs of this trait can be found in childhood, usually deriving from physical or mental abuse. Branden goes on to describe low self-esteem to be a pervasive sense of inadequacy, unworthlessness, and a lack of self-value. Individuals with low self-esteem often engage in self-sabotaging behaviors. And if you've ever read the book, The Stranger, then you know the act of self-sabotage is the most incriminating plot of the whole book, as Meursault kills an Arab man for no apparent reason, and this treasonous act had no consequence to his own moral belief. As he is questioned for the reasoning, he blames the sun and says that it was shining too bright inside of his face. Although Meursault usually evaded all circumstances of small talk, an instance with the soldier on the train or the warden in the funeral, he does find time to communicate with the pimp for the first time. While talking, they share black pudding and wine. Now, what makes the case for the pimp named Ramon any more different than others? It's simple. Ramon holds power, and when someone with authority pressures our personal tendencies or societal norms, we tend to be overcome. This is also shown when Meursault feels a need to apologize for attending his mother's funeral to his boss. Branden emphasized the wide-ranging repercussions of low self-esteem in various facets of life, encompassing interpersonal relationships, professional development, and psychological well-being. Individuals grappling with low self-esteem frequently encounter difficulties in forging genuine connections with others, primarily stemming from apprehensions surrounding rejection or pervasive sentiments of inadequacy. This could also explain why Meursault never visited his mother while she was at the elders' home. It could be that from previous stages inside of his life or early development that she had physically or mentally abused him, and that he felt that if he went to go visit her, he would be retracing his own steps backward. And Meursault feels as if the warden is blaming him for never visiting his mother, and he quotes to tell him that his mother was the only person that he ever had. But then he retraces it and says, "Well, you worked a job, and you don't make much money, so I can't blame you for bringing her here. You were a good son," in which Meursault feels as the man was blaming him in a hidden and forsaken way. Now, there's a very odd scene of apathy shown very early on in the book, and I felt I need to add this because this book has gained recognition for being apathetic, which goes against the moral standards of having apathy. And I believe this to be an apathy scene because When Meursault first enters the town of Marengo to the funeral, he's found in a room with his mother's body, and the casket is screwed down. When one of the employees takes out a screwdriver to undo it, Meursault screams at the man no, in which he feels an odd and uncomfortable reaction doing so afterwards. Although the casket is unscrewed later, with force, it is as if Meursault felt that he was uncomfortable seeing his mother lifeless and without control for the first time. Although together we will never know the full reasoning for why he did this, this was a very strange and odd scene, and it felt a need to be inside this video. The second psychological breakdown of the character Meursault would be a case of derealization versus depersonalization. Now, derealization and depersonalization are often coherent, so that means they occur at the same time simultaneously. And factors of derealization include being in a profound state of detachment from your own world or your surrounding world. It's as if you're living in a dream that you cannot escape. Now, Meursault shows a great factor of being unable to organize his own being and concentration. There are multiple factors of this mental disorder, and the ability to comprehend and withhold societal norms is one of the difficulties. Personally, I don't know if Camus wrote the character with this intention, due to his quest with absurdism or the challenge with abstract continuity. Camus wanted to portray characters as the philosophical beings of himself, in such ways of bringing his notion of captivity into personal stories. Meursault could in fact be the inner presence of what Camus felt as the connection he withheld with the people of France. Now that we've completed derealization, let's talk about depersonalization, which entails a disturbance in how one perceives oneself, resulting in a sense of detachment from one's body, thoughts, emotions, and actions. Those undergoing depersonalization might express sensations like observing their own life as if from an external standpoint, sensing their body as unfamiliar or mechanical, or feeling emotionally numb and disconnected from their experiences. Now, there are many examples inside the book to back this up, such as an earlier instance in the novel dealing with the soldier or the talk with the warden. In both of those, he shows no interest to hold a conversation. He goes on to quote, "They went on talking, but I paid no attention." This is where the character of Meursault being apathetic is portrayed. Now, depersonalization may ensue as a consequence of exposure to a significant trauma or heightened stress, whether stemming from an acute episode or prolonged adversity. Saying this, we don't know if Meursault used to act this way before the death of his mother, or this is just an episode caused by the death of his mother. Traumatic events like this can overwhelm the person's ability to cope effectively, leading to issues with the psyche and marking it into a defensive standpoint. But traumatic events like this can render a person ill-equipped to navigate the emotional fallout that they have been pitted in. Now, the third and final psychological breakdown of Meursault is very apparent throughout the whole book from beginning till the end. It's a very easy and ongoing case of detachment. Meursault struggles with detachment in factors of his mother, his personal life, and his love life. In the book, Meursault begins to foster a relationship with his ex-co-worker named Marie. Now, this relationship is very one-sided on the factor of the emotional standpoint, but on the physical standpoint, it is both-sided, as Meursault does sleep with her and enjoys her company. I would disagree and say that Meursault does enjoy the company and is interested in Marie indeed, but lacks the attachment physical ability and the emotional scale to dive into deeper and longer lengths of the relationship. Such as when Marie shows her desire to get married, Meursault backs away in a kind of indifferent way, and he says it didn't make any difference to me, her getting married or not. When she expressed her desire to get married once again, he says, "If you want to, we can get married. It's all the same to me." In attachment theory, there are 4 different styles, and the one that best benefits the style of Meursault would be avoidant attachment. People with this complexion have a tendency to minimize the importance of close relationships and have a preference for independence and self-reliance. This theory was explored by Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby as they dig deeper and deeper into the behaviors and characteristics of adults and adolescents with this issue. They found out that when this trait grows into adulthood, people with avoidant attachment may downplay the importance of relationships and prioritize activities or pursuits that allow them to maintain distance from others. They may invest more time and energy into work, hobbies, or solitary activities, viewing them as a safer alternative to intimate relationships. And we know this to be true about Meursault because when the warden looks at his records, he tells him that you're not to blame for keeping your mother here. We know that you work a job and that you don't make much money. And this is greatly explained in the love life of Meursault with Marie, as people with this trait maintain an emotional distance from their partners and avoid situations that require them to open up or express their feelings. The reluctance to engage in intimacy can create a tension and dissatisfaction in relationships, as their partners may feel unfulfilled by the lack of emotional connection. As we're reaching the end, let's give a psychological summary and psychological breakdown of the character of Meursault and what begs him to make this indifferent action of killing the Arab man. Now, the slaying done by Meursault is in a very odd timeline, as we know that his mother died a couple of days prior. Now, what's also very odd is the events and the confrontation that occurred before the slaying done by Meursault. In the first confrontation, Meursault takes the gun away from Raymond in order to spare the life of the Arab man. Yet in the second confrontation, Meursault feels a need to engage in the battle himself. Rather than sparing the life of the Arab man this time, he takes account into his own hands and murders him. Now, there may be a connection in these two analogies. In the wake of an abuser's departure, survivors of abuse often find themselves engulfed in a sea of emotions. This phenomenon is usually referred to as emotional turmoil. If we take in fact that Meursault was abused by his mother, and her leaving, or passing in other words, left a very open barrier inside of his physiological mind, then we have to take account that Meursault acted only on the will that he was provided. And if following her death, Meursault should feel very secure now. It's like a child reaching inside the cookie jar without a worry about getting caught. And it's only after his mother's death that Meursault now truly feels personal freedom. He makes a new friend named Raymond, which he would have never made back then while his mother was alive. He knows that he would have never talked to a pimp, and he knows that he would have never have defended him to a police officer. Yet, although him and Raymond are quite different, he may view him as an outsider or stranger like himself. In the contemporary aspect, this book is all around very sad till the end. When the priest comes at the end of the book to visit Meursault inside of his cell, Meursault is struck by a sadness inside of his voice. The priest tells him, "These stone walls, I know it all too well, are steeped in human suffering. I've never been able to look at them without a shudder, and yet, believe me, I am speaking from the depths of my heart. I know that even the wretchedest among you have sometimes seen, taking form against that greyness, a divine face. It's that face you are asked to see." Meursault replies and said, "I had been staring at those walls for months. There was nothing. There was nobody. Nothing in the world that I know better than I know them. And once upon a time, perhaps I used to try to see a face. But it was a sun-gold face, lit up with a desire, Marie's face. I had no luck. I'd never seen it, and now I've given up trying. Indeed, I'd never seen anything taken from, as he called those, grey walls."